Hello.
Hi, good
How's
evening.
everybody doing tonight?
Welcome to this back to school special of Life Without
Back to
Limits,
school.
coaching and counseling, or couples coaching.
Couples coaching.
Couples Coaching 101. Sorry about that. Couples Coaching 101. And tonight we're talking about back to school because for traditional calendar, that is,
Right.
back to school for regular kids in elementary, middle school, and high school started this week. And of course, those kids that are in college, they already started maybe a week or two ago, depending on where you went. So before we get started, we'd like to say, first of all, that this is a public forum, so anything that you post in the comment section is public and available for all to see. If you have a private matter that you would like us to answer or address for you, please send an email to lifewithoutlimitscc@gmail.com. And remember to please post and share this video whenever we're done. And good evening, everybody that has joined thus far. I think I've missed some of the names, but we're going to dive right into our topic, and I think we'll be able to finish this in one segment here of episode number 30, right?
Yep,
episode number 30, Back to School
Back to
on
School.
couples coaching.
And so, tonight, just, I guess we were just talking and we was talking about, I guess some of the things that we found some success in just kind of working with specifically your teenagers, but your children. And, it can be very challenging for most of us because a lot of us, this is the first time we've kind of been a parent. It's not like you get a second run
Right.
at being a parent, Sometimes I say, boy, I sure wish I'd have said that better, right? Well, you only get one opportunity to say it. You can go back and you can apologize for the way you said it, but you really don't get a second chance. So it's always nice when you can kind of do some things and figure out some things that can help you be successful in the now, right? And so one of the things that we found is goals. We like to set goals with our children for back to school. Okay, so what are your we like to talk about what our expectations are. And what their expectations are and what their goals are. So we write them down, right? We write them down. We put them on paper. We've got a little community board that we use, and we like to pin them up on the board, and usually sometimes we may even sign them, all right, or get them to sign them. And these are not our goals for them. These are their goals. These are goals that they've set, all right, and we encourage, and we also let them know what our expectations are, what we expect. So, in other words, if you have a child that's maybe have gotten all D's, and they set a goal to get all A's, that's possible. It's possible, but what about if you set a goal and say, okay, this year, we expect you to bring home B's and C's, right? To go from D's to B's and C's, that's a stride, right? If you'd have said that to me when I was in high school, that would have been really, really good because, I was the guy on the bottom that made it possible for everybody else to be on the top, right?
Yeah.
See, the reason they was able to finish in the top is because I finished in the bottom, right?
Yeah. So. And another thing with setting expectation and setting goals for your youth, and basically base it on desire, and it needs to be different for each child. And so really, please don't get into comparing one child to the next.
Yeah.
You may have one child that's very studious. They get out all their work on their own, and they never need your intervention to say, hey, did you do your homework? And you may have the other child that is like, the homework is in the lost hole in the back of the room, and you find it at the end of the semester. So, desire comes into play. Is this child very organized?
Motivated?
Do they need an agenda? Do they have an agenda? Do we have a way of, tracking, that they have a way of tracking their assignments? So it needs to be specific to each child based on their desire, based on their level of organization, based on their learning style and their needs. All kids don't need the same thing with regard to that. And then the other thing too is you do want it to be time limited. It's okay to have an overall goal for the entire school year. We're talking about about 10 months of the school year. But then you want to shorten it, because if you think about the entire school year, that can seem really long.
Right.
So what you want to do is you want to do it to either progress report time or maybe report card time, depending on whether or not you're on a semester or quarter system. But I think for the most part on traditional calendar, report cards come out about every 9 weeks. But you may want to do a check-in, and it may just be to, okay, you're going to have 6 assignments during this 9 weeks. Let's set a goal to make a B on at least 4 out of these 6 assignments and make sure we do them all and those sort of things. So you want to base it off that. And I think that's probably enough on goals, but certainly...
Yeah, but I want to say that was a very good point, because most of us work best with short intervals of goals, and probably 9 weeks is a long
kind of a
time.
long time.
Yeah,
because that's more than 90 days. Well, roughly about 90 days.
Right, and the other thing you can do is you can keep up with progress. I know in Wake County they've got, I don't know if they have this all over. Power schools, where, the grades are pretty much, up to date on what assignments we're in. And granted, some teachers, don't put the grades in as quickly. And so the grade is not reflective, but it's very helpful in something that you can use to measure how things are going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the next thing we want to talk about is setting boundaries for your children, your youth, your teenagers, your young, almost adults. Setting boundaries for them, and within these boundaries, you may tie them to some goal or something. So I'll let you talk a little bit more about the technology goals.
Yeah, technology is challenging. I didn't have a technology challenge when I was growing up. I think as I became a teenager, I did get a black and white 13-inch television that I had to make sure was turned off before I went to bed.
Right.
And I had a radio. I don't know if it was AM or just FM, but, and I like to sleep with the radio on, but, my dad would, he'd turn the radio off and turn the television off. And I understand that. And so I'm that way with my children, especially during the school year. Hey, technology, you'd be surprised how much your children are waking up in the middle of the night and getting on Snapchat and returning text messages and things like that. If that cell phone is in the bedroom with your children, they will be getting up. So really, you have to teach them. Remember, everything that your children need to know, they're going to know by the time they leave home. Right. Okay? And because you learn it at home first. And so setting boundaries and structure around yourself, being able to contain yourself. Have you ever seen people that no matter what they're doing, they're attached to their cell phone? Have you ever seen that before? Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen people that, they can't seem to put it down? Well, if adults are not able to I remember I went to this training and this guy next to me, I'll never forget it. He had a tablet, a laptop, and 2 cell phones. I've never met anybody that was more important, okay, than this guy, okay? And during the whole training, all his devices was going off, bleeping and chirping and vibrating, and I mean like every 5 minutes. And I thought to myself, wow, this guy must really be important. But so if adults have a hard time setting boundaries with technology, your children are really going to be challenged.
And the best recommendation that we can give is to let these things, let the cell phones let them be charged and charge them at night in a common area. Such as, in the kitchen, or if you have a little table somewhere that is not in their bedrooms, that sort of thing. So each family is different. You have to judge it based on what works for you and your family. But that's what we've done, and it's worked. It's worked for us. I mean, of course, there are times when they're going to sneak and have their phones, etc., and there are times when they're allowed to have their phones. But anyway, let's get on to the next thing, so we'll have enough time to finish all of these.
Okay, go ahead.
So the next thing is also with boundaries like leisure time, television time, games. The games such as like your Xbox. Yeah,
outside time. I mean, kids still go outside, games. Right?
Absolutely.
Today?
Well, physical activity is very fun. I mean, we never made it a requirement because our kids have always been outside kids. And at least I know for our son, he gets outside time every single day, pretty much for the most part.
Right.
And that's just part of who he is as a kid. We never had to make him go outside, but that was something that we started when they were really, really young.
Right.
You wanted to say something else about that?
No. I didn't want to say anything.
Okay. So the next thing is open house.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now we had a really interesting revelation about open house. We typically go to open house, and unless it's absolutely unavoidable, we both attend open house. In our family. And we always present as a united front within our family, but also with the teachers and the staff at the school, just so they know that we are here to work with you. And we are like a little mini family, because you got my babies for 7 hours a day.
It's a unified team.
It's a unified team. So we recently learned, I never knew why, it was always some sort of attitude. Intention when we went to open house. I mean, the kids didn't really get any bad reports or anything. It was never anything wrong. But our kids was questioned as to, why are both your parents here? And our kids were embarrassed.
They were embarrassed. They said, really? Both of y'all? God.
So anyway, but it is important. And you know what? It's important in situations where it is a two-parent household, and if it's not mom and dad, that there is an uncle, or that there is a brother, or there's a granddaddy that is involved. It's important for them to be there, and for those teachers and those staff to see that this kid has a solid family, a solid support system. Because the assumption is of the opposite.
Yeah.
Because every single year we're told pretty much that, your kids don't know how blessed they are, or they don't have this, and we know that, and they know that they are blessed, but it is very important. So that just tells me that the stereotypes are already there and in their forethought to be, for that to be shared.
Right. And I think it's important too, because later on, like I remember when my son was in middle school, and we had a conference, and the teacher, one of the teachers walked in. Now this is at the beginning of the year, or maybe it was like after the first grading period, because we always request a conference with our children's teachers. And this teacher walked in, and I thought, oh my God, this is one of my son's teachers? I said, oh my goodness. So later on in the year, when he came home and said, Miss So-and-so, blah, 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 I thought to myself, well, yeah, I'm not surprised.
Right,
okay. Right. Because, and so it helped me understand how much I needed, how much was him and how much was the teacher.
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Because usually there's a two-sided to it. It's your child, and your child ain't totally wrong, and the teacher's not totally wrong. But as a parent, sometimes you got to try to figure out what a middle ground is.
Absolutely.
And that's a great way to do it if you have met that teacher and you see the emotional process that teacher demonstrates or exhibits during a parents-teachers conference.
Right.
Because you can see it. If teachers have problems, you can see it from the beginning, okay?
Absolutely.
So,
and I just want to say a little bit more about what you said about the conference, that it is important to ask for a conference, particularly if you have not had a face-to-face with your teachers. Like if they weren't at open house, like for whatever reason, I don't know, last year, and I complained to the principal, 25% of the teachers weren't there for open house. So how can you have an open house and a large portion of your teachers aren't here? And then we're only given an hour and a half for 2 kids to get through 12 teachers. So things of that nature. But it is important for you to ask for a conference, not just when things are going bad, but because you want to present that team approach, number one, to let the teachers know that you have open communication and that you are there to support the child and to support them in the classroom while they're teaching your child and all the other children. I mean, I never forget when Ayana was in the 9th grade and we requested a conference. She had like 2 or 3 teachers pull her to the side and ask her what was wrong, what were her parents upset about. And so we went in and we were just like, we see grades. Grades are good. We're not concerned about grades. How is she doing socially? Who are her friends? Is she making it to class on time? These are questions that we need to, that your grade, just because you got good grades, you won't be able to see as parents. So I mean, it just keeps the doors of communication open, and the kids don't like it a lot of times because I know with my son, he's like, oh no, don't email them or don't meet them because they're going to be saying, I know your mama, I'm going to email your mama. I want them to email his mama. Okay, go ahead.
So attending, so we talked about building relationship. Let's move on. Set aside discussion time. And this is important as your children, especially as they're getting older, they start going through the teenage years, but it's a good habit. One of the things that we orchestrate is mealtime. Okay, so that's a discussion time where we get an opportunity to talk, and then when they become teenagers, you have to be a lot more creative with setting that up, and so I've just tried to be methodical in us having time together, whether it be spiritual time, whether it be, just time, to share a funny story. It doesn't have to be around food, but just a time where there's communication, where there's non-judgment, where there's support, where there's empathy. Empathy meaning sometimes I think as parents, we forget what we were like when we were kids. Okay. And so I think if you remember what you were like, if you remember what you felt, if you remember how you felt about your parents, it makes you a little more empathetic when you're dealing with your children during this discussion time. Because me, I'm just a trainer and a teacher at heart, and I always want to teach, I always want to train. Well, what I had to learn is I had to pull back, okay? And sometimes, I had to learn to be a good listener as well, and not condemning and not correcting and not teaching.
Right.
Okay. I had to learn not to do those things all the time.
Yeah, all the time. So it's so easy to want to correct, but if you are always in that correct mode or the mode of where you're trying to tell them what they should do or give an example of what it was like for you, kids will shut down on you and they won't share their experiences. But if you just listen and as few words as possible, really actively listen, they will really share a lot more with what's going on in their situation.
Okay, so let's go to if you have teenagers.
Okay, so we're going to go to if you have teenagers. Another thing about being non-judgmental that I think has really helped me to try to have those moments where I'm really not is like with their music. Is really trying.
Have you heard the music? Oh my God!
But I use the music. Sometimes I do, even if it's not. Maybe if I'm not doing it at that time, it may be a discussion starter later when I may bring up something like, "Oh yeah, like what about this that Young Thug said? What does that really mean? What's the metaphor behind that?" So those kind of things. So I listen to, yes, because I want to be a part of their world and I want to hear what they're listening to and see what they think about these things. But also it helps me to be able to understand what they're listening to and to be able to guide them through that at a later time. So if you have teenagers,
So if you have teenagers, and this is challenging, and some of you, I see Miss Gorham on, and I know she's just graduated her baby, and so just understand that your children are not your friends. And I think it's so challenging sometimes. I think being a parent sometimes for a long time, it's like if you were a farmer and farmers, they plant in the spring would be a very long time. So just imagine that. And that's what being a parent is. It's a long time of planning. And you think, oh my God, they graduated from high school. How much longer do I have? And they're talking about college. Oh Lord, so it's like this whole planning time, and there's very little reward.
Right.
Very little reward.
Right.
And so, and that's just my opinion.
You're gonna feel unappreciated.
So
you
feel unappreciated a lot. Yeah.
With teenagers, it's like, yeah.
And so just know that your children are not going to like you all the time, and be okay with that. Okay, be okay with that, and so be prepared to feel unappreciated. Mm-hmm. Okay, it is a tireless, but it's a very rewarding job. When you see your child graduate from high school, that is huge. When you see your child graduate from middle school and elementary and college, man, there's no feeling that replaces that feeling. But boy, it's a lot of work. To get there. And so,
we got just one more thing, and then I think we're finished. So the last thing is just a couple do's and don'ts for bullying. I know a lot of times, when we say, oh, that's not bullying, we got teased when we were kids, it's not the same thing, everything is called bullying. Well, it is. And I know people are listening from other counties and areas or whatever. And I know where we live, basically it's a zero tolerance for bullying. So most of the time your child is not going to want you to really do a whole lot about the bullying, because that increases the teasing from other kids when that happens. But I'm going to tell you, as a parent, you got to ignore that, and you have to communicate immediately when it's bullying. Whether it's, first off, start with the teacher. If it's elementary and it's just one teacher for all day, you start with that teacher, and then you move on to the next teacher. If it's in a middle school, there may be other things and systems that they need to put in place to make sure. I know, like in middle school, they change classes. It may be something different that needs to be done until it dies down. But sweeping it under the rug and just thinking it's going to go away is not going to go away. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. So communication is the key. Keep going until you get someone that hears you and that is listening to you. Now, if it's somebody that you know and you have a relationship, reach out to that parent and say, hey, I don't know if you knew this was going on between the kids, but this is what's happening. We had a situation several years back, and we knew who it was, and that's what we did. And, we was able to pretty much nip it in the bud pretty quickly. Did it immediately stop? No, it didn't. But we gave our child the tools. The school was on notice. The school was involved. We made sure we let the school know too. And then the situation, it did resolve. So it's very important. So if you're not getting it from your teacher, you need to go up to administration. And then if you're not getting it from administration at that school, you need to go up to the superintendent of schools. And I know in Wake County, I think there's two or three for each county or each area or district. So there's several depending on the county that you live in. You can find that information if you don't know already online. So, I think I covered it.
We're out of time. Okay.
I did my notes without looking.
Guys, listen, thanks for listening in, and, like it, share it, make comments. And, you can always reach us by email, lifewithoutlimits, with an S, cc@gmail.com. So we're going to close out with our slogan.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So we empower the people that build the relationship. Have a great week, and congratulations on your first week back at school.
God bless you.